And when I say, hey, I'm blind, I cannot see your face, they're like, what?
We need to just help them to understand this subject.
But somehow driver picked the wrong road.
So it just says button.
Like, do you know who uses this screen?
No way. Hi, welcome back to Deconstructing Accessibility. Today we're going to be talking about web accessibility here with Akash. So, it being Global Accessibility Awareness Day tomorrow, what do you feel like people do not know about people who are visually impaired?
Yeah, so mostly people doesn't know about the visual impairment because many of these disabilities falls under the invisible disability. Like you cannot just recognize by looking at them. Like if you just see me, you will not be able to recognize me that I'm a person with visual impairment.
And I do.
And right now, and that's yeah. But mostly people don't realize. Even I end up doing half an hour conversation with them, and when I say, "Hey, I'm blind. I cannot see your face," they're like, "What? What are you saying?" So that kind of conversation happens. So that's why people
Right.
think generally these disability does not exist, and they never think about these things.
Thank you for telling me. Otherwise, I would never have known.
Yeah.
And anyway, so yeah, but going back, are there any funny stories that you've had when trying to travel using perhaps Google Maps?
Yeah. Right. So I can share one story. So, like generally, when you go, you can just open that location on the Google Map, and you can see the area around. You can see how the buildings look like. Even for me, where I am staying right now, I am very well familiar of this building. But when I was recently coming from an airport, I booked a cab and I even shared the location with my wife. But somehow, driver picked the wrong road, and he was like he ended up coming to the door next to my society, and he was continuously blowing the horn there. And what we realized that he was blowing the horn on the door of a garden, not on the society. The society was just before that, which was already open.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's difficult today. So if you can't tell them, if you can't give him the feedback, because you can't see, then you're over dependent on the technology.
Right. I wanted to ask you how do you help these people who are visually impaired and are having struggles like this every day?
So what we're doing is I have a company called Saralx where we are helping corporates and universities in making their digital infrastructure accessible. It may be website, mobile application, documents, even any sort of content like social media content, email communication. So what kind of things you should be taking care of when you are rolling out any of these things? So that any person with disability, not just a visual impairment, any person with disability, it may be locomotor, maybe hearing impairment, maybe neurodivergent, any of them should be able to access the applications without any barrier.
Yeah. What do you feel like most of these websites or apps are missing in the UI?
So there are many things like many of the times what happens is it will just say button. It will not say what kind of button it is. Okay, it's a submit button, it's a next button, or what kind of button it is.
So it just says button.
Yeah, it just say button. Okay,
so when,
it will not say.
So when you're just explain that for those who don't understand web accessibility. What does it mean, a web button?
Yeah. Okay. So as a blind person, I use a software called a screen reader, which is basically a text-to-speech based software which read out whatever is written on the screen, and it also provides it property. Like generally, the button's property is either it's going to submit some form, some data, or it's going to bring me to the next, like next page or next screen, something like that. Okay. Now, when my focus of the screen reader is going on that particular button. Now, if it's just saying button, okay. Now, I cannot understand what kind of button it is. Like it's a next button, it's a submit button. What should I do there?
Oh, that could be pretty annoying. You could end up getting very confused, like where I'm going forward, backwards, printing. Could be all sorts of different things. So, so like if you're booking a train, you go to the which website would you go to? Would you go to one of the commercial ones, or would you go to the Indian government one?
So we sometimes we use Indian government one. Sometimes we use generally the private companies like that we have the travel aggregators we have in India. So we use mix of both depending on what kind of offers or what kind of are available.
Which are the ones that are commonly used? I know make my trip. Which ones do you find are more accessible?
Okay, unfortunately, nothing.
Nothing.
None of them.
No.
Yeah, I guess that. And what about the government website for the train booking and so on? What about those?
No. So none of these are really accessible. You cannot. It's very hard. But with practice, you will realize, okay, this is how you need to manage. If you need to frequently use one of these applications. But if you really talk about the good experience, no, none of these are accessible.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I'll just tell you, I find most of the travel ones very exhausting. Also, I'm a carer, so I'm always looking at I'm looking for the button for filtering for wheelchair accessible and stuff like that. And I find most of the websites are pretty useless. They're not helpful at all.
Right, I agree. A lot of gaps are there. Even I can recall one more incident which recently happened with me. I was interacting with one of the corporate, and they actually belongs from one of the BFSI, one of the leading bank in India. So when I was having interaction with them, they was like, "Yeah, we are working on making our application accessible, and we are even thinking of keeping the security intact, so that when the screen reader is reading out the information, it shouldn't read out the entire your bank account number, so that no one else can hear it."
Yeah.
Okay. Then I said, okay, that's fine, that's good. You're taking care of those things. But now tell me, if I really want to know my bank account number so that I can share with someone else who need to transfer money to me, how will I do that?
Yeah.
Okay. Then he says that, that's a good point. We are thinking of that. Maybe the screen can be zoomed up to a large extent so that the person can view from very close by. And I said, do you know who uses the screen reader?
No way.
Screen reader used by the person with blindness who cannot see at all. And now you're saying maybe that person can zoom to a large extent and then can read the account as well. What are you talking about?
Oh God.
Oh, that's so funny. It can happen. It can happen. And I think really this really brings me to the point that in a compassionate way, we have to understand that most people just don't really have much of an idea, and in a kind and firm way, we need to just help them to understand this subject without ridiculing or chastising and so on.
Right, I agree. Whenever you are thinking about accessibility, you should always involve person with disability in the loop.
Exactly.
It shouldn't be you are just taking the feedback from the normal people who does not know anything about accessibility. Then how they can give the feedback. Yeah. Very good.
And we've seen this time and again with physical accessibility that the experts will interpret the same standards as we are reading, and they'll come up with a totally different and often very flawed mistakes in that. So, and a recent example of that is the revision of the harmonized guidelines in space standards. And when that came out, I was shocked to see that they had left no space next to the commode in the toilets. So there's no wheelchair accessible space for lateral transfer. And this was revised by experts, but those experts were not wheelchair users. And I don't think they consulted with wheelchair users. So now you've got a very flawed document, which is going out and is actually mandatory by law. And it's got some very serious mistakes. And if those mistakes are made into practical, actual buildings and so on, they're going to cause suffering and inconvenience for many years to come. Plus, of course, the waste of money.
Yeah. Right. And even whenever any policy is getting formulated, one of the recommendation which I always give, many of the policies says that in the committee there should be at least 1 or 2% of disability. But what I would generally recommend is not just think of 1 or 2% of disability. Even if you can just limit to 1 or 2, make sure that the person with disabilities are in the rotation, like, because 1% with disability cannot understand all disability.
Yeah, that's true.
Correct.
Well,
Nice.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and be here next week to learn something new.
Maybe I can just close with a quote from the United Nations, which says that spending on systems and facilities is not a expense for minority. It's actually an investment for everyone. There are many things which are initially built for people with disability, but now used by everyone. There are a lot of examples like electric toothbrush, the dark mode, which was initially a requirement of person with disability, but now everyone uses that.